Good evening. It's Joe again. If you listened to my last story, you probably noticed it carried a heavier tone. And that's okay. Life has weight, real weight, and sometimes it sits on our shoulders longer than we'd like. But not everything we carry is sorrow, and not every night needs to feel like a quiet struggle. Some moments, small, ordinary moments, remind us that the world isn't always as dark as it seems, and that people are capable of surprising us in the best possible ways. Tonight, I want to share something that happened to a friend of mine. Nothing dramatic, no wild twists or shocking turns, just a simple moment, one that stayed with him and with me for years, because sometimes the smallest moments are the ones that shift something inside you. Sometimes they hold a truth that might just change your life. Let's begin. My friend wasn't the kind of man who expected good things. Not anymore. He had learned, through time and repetition, that hoping too much often led to disappointment. So he lived quietly, almost mechanically. Work, go home, sleep, wake up, repeat. Days blending into each other, weeks passing in a soft blur. It wasn't that he was unhappy. He had simply stopped expecting anything different. The world, to him, was something to move through gently, without stirring the water. One evening, after a long and exhausting day, he stopped by a small grocery store on his walk home. It was nothing special, just a neighborhood shop he'd passed 100 times without paying attention. He went inside, grabbed a loaf of bread, a carton of milk, and stood in line. He didn't think much about it. His mind was still at work, replaying conversations, thinking about deadlines, worrying about things that weren't entirely his responsibility, but somehow became his anyway. You know how life does that, adds weight when you're already leaning forward. He looked tired. You could see it in the way he held his shoulders, in the way he shifted his weight from one foot to the other. He didn't notice it, but everyone else could. The kind of quiet exhaustion people carry when they've been holding too much, for too long. In front of him stood an older woman, grey hair, soft smile, the kind of presence that feels gentle without trying to be. When it was her turn to pay, she opened her purse and froze. Her hands trembled slightly as she looked inside. She whispered something to the cashier, apologetic, embarrassed, almost ashamed. She didn't have enough money to pay for her groceries. The line grew quiet instantly. That heavy kind of quiet where everyone knows what's happening, but pretends they don't. People shifted their feet, looked away, stared at the gum and candy racks like they were suddenly fascinating. And my friend, who barely spoke to anyone these days, who rarely lifted his eyes long enough to meet another's, did something he hadn't planned. He stepped forward, placed a few bills on the counter and said softly but clearly, "It's all right, I've got it." The woman turned to him. Her eyes were full of surprise, and something warm, something fragile. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "I know," he replied, "but I wanted to." She thanked him, gently touching his arm, as if the gesture itself might crumble under too much pressure. Then she gathered her things and walked out of the store, slow and careful, like she was carrying something precious in her hands, something invisible but deeply meaningful. The cashier smiled at him as she rang up his groceries, a small smile, but an honest one. And for the first time in a very long time, my friend felt something move inside his chest. Not pride, not guilt, something simpler. Lightness, like a window had opened somewhere inside him, letting in a breeze he'd forgotten existed. As he walked home with his bread and milk, the street looked different. Not brighter, not magical, just less heavy. As if the world had tilted slightly toward kindness, even if only for a moment. He sat on his couch that night, groceries beside him, and found himself thinking about what had happened, how small it was, how ordinary, And yet, how much it had affected him. He realized something important. He had spent years waiting for the world to give him a reason to feel good, waiting for some event, some miracle, some turning point that would change everything. But all along, he could have created one himself, a small gesture, a quiet choice, a moment no one else would remember, but he did, and it changed him, not entirely, not dramatically, but enough to matter. From that day on, whenever things felt too heavy, he reminded himself of that moment, reminded himself that if you can't find the good, you can be the good, and somehow, after that, things never looked quite as dark again. So, here's what I'm really trying to say. Sometimes the hope we're searching for doesn't come from the world giving us something, but from us giving something to the world. A small act of kindness, something quiet, something simple, can light up a part of you that you thought had gone dark. And when you do something for someone else, even for a stranger, you might find the very thing you've been missing, a bit of joy, a bit of meaning, a reminder that you still matter. If life ever feels too heavy, remember this story. Remember that the quickest way to feel hope again is often to create it for someone else. Good night, and thank you for listening.